Two, our collection rates are decreasing because our costs go up, the Medicare costs stay similar, and therefore our losses are increasing. We are recommending this increase to pass those costs on to those non-Medicare charges. The charge would be the same, but we would only be able to collect the Medicare amount. And if you have questions, I know Chief Lucan can explain some of the billing issues, but at this point in time, we are recommending a 10% increase.
All right. Mr. Nephew.
I just want to suggest to members of the public that they can look at the workshop where we discussed this at considerable length for more detailed information on it. But the short reality is that we don't collect the amount that we charge from very many people, and so that's why that amount keeps having to go larger to make up for the shortfalls from the others. And there's not really an end in sight in that kind of cycle, basically. So we're not happy to have these increases, but that's what we need to do to keep the ambulance fund paying for itself. And with that, I would move the staff recommendation of the resolution increasing the ambulance rates for next year.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion that was made by Mr. Nephew. It's been seconded by Mr. Copen to approve the adoption of the ambulance rates for 2011. Ms. Juneman, do you have a comment?
I have a question. I don't recall if we discussed this or not at the workshop, but is there no Medicare reimbursement for a non-transport? Thank you.
As I've stated in the past, we really have to find a different way. I mean, I stated, I think, maybe 1 or 2 years ago that it isn't fair to be having people pay for those who aren't paying, at least not this much. But I agree with Mr. Nephew, we have to keep money in the fund, and so I'm not sure what the solution is, but there's got to be a different one. Kathy, I think this is an old light, or?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Any further comments? So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's ayes all. That then brings us to resolution for adoption of the 2011 recycling fees. Mr. Kaneko.
Mayor, Council, thank you. Staff is proposing a 5% increase in the recycling fees for 2011. The current monthly recycling fee is $212 per unit, which works out to be $635 per quarter. The recycling rates have not been increased since 2007, when the rates were $202 and $605 respectively. The 2009 revenue from recycling fee was approximately $392,000. If Council does decide to pass this resolution, that 5% will result in an increase of approximately $20,000 into the recycling fund. As stated in the memo too, there's a 36% increase in the 2011 proposed recycling budget over the 2010 recycling budget. And as was explained to Council, $75,000 of that was for some proposed consulting work. $75,000 was put in there in anticipation of the recycling contract, and there was increases of about $20,000 to personnel, and that works out to be $170,000, or that 36% over 2010. So with that, I'll turn it back to the Mayor and Council and answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Lanas.
Just so that it's a matter of record in case the viewing public can look through the packet, the average increase for the single family homes is about 31 cents a quarter. Is that correct?
Mayor, Council, that's correct, yes.
And interestingly enough, your number that it totals is a very ominous number. It could have maybe been a little bit more. The $6.66, Mr. Kaneko.
Mayor and Council, I think Mr. Lanas wants us to sharpen our pencil a bit, and it was pretty damn sharp when I put this together.
Is there some satanic?
Yes, but he didn't get it, so
I
just
see.
move on.
I got it, yes.
He-
But he's hoping that not acknowledging it.
I was not going to
He's just
acknowledge
devoid
it, yes.
Devoid of the ability to have any humor.
Well,
No.
If that's
Mr.
what you
Nephew.
call it.
So I had a question from someone today who was asking about, well, we just signed this, great deal with a new provider that was lower than the competition for recycling rates, and so why are we seeing this increase? And so I think that just to highlight the big picture, we actually are not collecting as much in recycling fees as the recycling program costs right now. And so part of what we're doing is just catching up on that, but doing it gradually. And these rates have not previously been increased since 2007. Is that correct? And the other factor is we did, about a year ago, as I recall, approve an amendment to the agreement with Eureka, who is continuing to do the work until the end of this month, where we were paying them more because essentially they were not able to viably do the work at those rates because of how the recycling market had cratered. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor Council. Yeah, that rate went up to, and that was a blended rate to 210 per unit, yes.
Okay. And so, and in ballpark terms, the new contract, and correct me if I'm wrong, my recollection is that the new contract is not a whole lot less than what the revised contract was with the previous.
Mayor Council, the new contract that was awarded by Council came in at just under a mil, which is roughly $335,000 per year, or somewhere in the neighborhood of about $33,000 per month. And we're currently paying Eureka now somewhere in the neighborhood. Our last bill was $28,000, only because we did have a pretty good month with regard to our commodities. So it's been averaging anywhere from $28,000 to $35,000 per month.
Okay. So we were, the savings were really compared to the increases that we were expecting with the alternative vendors, not so much that we're slashing the bottom line going into the new year.
Correct, Mayor, Council, when this budget was put together, we didn't know what that new contract would look like, so we did include some additional funding there just in case the contract was more than we're currently paying.
Okay. I don't know if there's anybody else, but I'll offer a motion to approve the resolution adopting 2011 recycling fees.
Second.
Mr. Nephew has made a motion. It's been seconded by Mr. Copen to adopt the 2011 recycling fees. Are there any other comments, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes all. All right, so now we go down our list to the adoption of environmental utility fund rates for 2011.
Mayor and Council, thank you. This item, we're recommending an increase of 52 cents per month to a single-family home. That amounts to a 10% increase in the environmental utility fund rates. Council, this particular program is the one probably most significant for changing conditions and mandates that are now facing the city. Mr. Thompson just recently gave a presentation to a couple of hundred engineers about new programs that we have to do, cleaning out ponds, inventory in our system, and reducing the quantity and quality of our runoff rates to 1988 levels. And those are new programs that are just 3 and 4 years old, but those are absolute requirements where we not only have to put a program together, we have to monitor it, and we have to prove that we're accomplishing those goals. This is extremely time-consuming and taking up more and more staff time. As well, we are trying to make this program as self-sufficient as possible within that. We will still be doing some bonding in 2011 to cover some of the projects that we do. Literally, I think we used an example of the Hazelwood Street project when we did that reconstruction. Had we done that project 3 years earlier, the cost of the project would have been 25% less. But the rules changed with the infiltration of 1 inch per hour. We simply have those types of increase in project costs, and rather than go to the taxpayers through the general fund, we're trying to allocate those costs through the environmental utility and the infiltration rates that are there. And so this program is continuing to increase in expenses. Luckily, our fees are right in the middle of what are charged in surrounding communities, and so we certainly are within the range and competitive with the surrounding area. And so with that as an explanation, we do recommend the 10% increase in environmental utility fund rates.
Okay. Ms. Juniman?
What's the consequence to a non-DEG plan community like us if you don't live up to your plan and your agreement?
Mayor and Council, you will be put on orders and you will not be allowed to issue any building permits. I mean, you literally will have to stop the city and you will be put under a work order to implement.
Yeah. I just want people to understand this isn't
Right,
something
yep.
they wave in front of you and say this is an optional program. You either do it or they make it worth your while to do it.
Correct.
I will move the adoption of the environmental utility fund rates.
Second.
All right, so I'm going to accept the motion. The second, we do have someone in the audience who would like to speak on this particular item, so take a moment to do that.
Thank you very much for extending me the courtesy of being able to say something during a motion. I just wanted to say a couple things about this. I had listened to the council meeting from last meeting, and it was my understanding that it was said that fees weren't going to be going up except for those that were passed through from the Met Council. Is that correct?
I believe that there was a time when Mr. Schilling asked about some fees that we were looking at then, and the response was that on that list, the fees did not go up except those that had been passed through from the Met Council.
Okay, so that's none of these fees here.
That is correct.
Okay. So, and of course, I certainly understand the issue with us having to take care of our ponds and be certain that the sediments within them are not at a level that could be harmful to the environment, because certainly I know that that's something that I brought up probably at least 3.5 years ago when there was an article in the paper about White Bear Lake finding themselves in that situation. And so while I know that we're putting together a plan now, I believe we should have had a plan already in place. And that's my feeling about that. And then I'm wondering, I'm hearing that we're going to be doing some more bonding on these environmental utility tax, this tax. Do you know offhand about how much bonding we're going to be doing in proportion to the amount of revenue coming in?
Do we know that?
Mayor and Council, no. We'll be looking at the fund and the amount of balance as we look into January and February, work with Mr. Thompson on the exact needs of the project, so we probably won't know that till February or March next year.
Do we know even like a ballpark? Is it like 20% bonding to revenue, or there must be some general feel?
Why don't we just wait until we have real numbers instead of speculating?
Okay, so then the question then is that if a person doesn't know what amount you will be bonding for, or what you may need to bond for, then the question is this rate the right rate? Because perhaps the rate is not increasing enough, or perhaps it is increasing too much. Because if you do not know what ratio you are going to have between your bonding and the amount of revenue you have coming in, or even any expectation of those projects, the amount of rate that you're setting may be insufficient, or it may be too much. And I wanted to just put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the only person. So we have a motion on the floor. It was made by Ms. Juniman, seconded by Mr. Copen, to adopt the sanitary, let's see, where are we at? Are we at? We're at the environmental?
Yes.
Okay. To adopt the environmental utility fund rates for 2011. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Was there any opposed there? Okay, it's ayes all. All right, so that brings us then to the adoption of